Three, we are live. Hello, everyone. I know this is a topic that's not going to get the attention it deserves because, for some reason, first worldists don't seem to care about real fucking issues. No offense, but I'm really getting tired of the. I'm just going to go on a tangent here. Of every time I talk about serious issues, it seems like people don't seem to care because the disabled struggle is something that it affects all of us because all of us will be disabled at some point, whether it's due to age and injury. It's inevitable.
Right.
And, and the fact that this is not being discussed, and especially with the rising tide of fascism, in the first world, on how one of the first peoples that are going to be a target, in fascism is always marginalized people, the disabled being one of them. You didn't miss out on anything, Stan. This stream just started, and the fact is, what prompted me to do this, though, I will get to that in a bit. The disabled workers, anyone who's disabled who's watching this, you'll know what I'm talking about. The disabled are the first ones to be fired and the last ones to be hired. But again, that's not how I want to say it. What I actually meant to say was we're the first ones. Sorry, I'm my mind's all over the place. The last ones hired and the first ones fired. Like, I shouldn't say too much, but let's just say that the company that I work for is starting to enact a policy that is discriminatory towards the disabled. And I'm not shocked in the slightest they did this. What actually shocks me, and it shouldn't, but just how detached everyone seems to be. I brought up, wait, this policy will affect the disabled overwhelmingly. This is discrimination. And everyone was like shrugging it off. And when I asked my like people that I knew on what the hell I should do, they basically said that it's up to the individual managers regarding because the disabled, regarding social security benefits. Like, what the fuck? So the disabled have to put our fucking fate in the hands of our bosses who may or may not have something against disabled people? What the fuck? That's bullshit. We need systematic protection, not individualist protection. Like, one thing I will say this is I'm loving this in a way because it shows what the system truly is in our face.
The fact that there's no uh, like policy or clause that's like, okay, yeah, disabled people come under not just part-time work, but a specific subsector of part-time work. And the reason why they can't do that is only people have the sectioned out support of being disabled have such a job life. A majority of people who are disabled, this is a thing a lot of people don't get disability pay. They don't have a part-time job. They don't have healthcare support. They're having to work as many hours as they physically can until they physically can't, and then still work some more. And they're having to work deadbeat jobs because every job not only requires you to have a shit ton of skills that are already hard to acquire when you suffer with a disability, but they require you to have all these fucking degrees that you ain't gonna get if you got a disability and you're in the lower class because of the very tight knit work yourself to death schedule that is set out for the middle class that's ableist. You have to meet a certain set of criteria that you're never going to meet. So you're always in this weird niche of either you are one with support, but you don't get any backing because they don't want to allow the defense of people who don't have support, or you're the ones without support where it's a good luck and get fucked. And that's the way the system deals with the disabled. We're just another not only just another member of the Reserve Army of Labor, we make up the largest force of the Reserve Army of Labor because the disabled population of the lower class is not dictated by color. It's all over the spectrum. Although a majority of us in the lumpen proletariat whom are disabled are black because of the racial oppression, especially in places like America. But the discrimination of the disabled it attacks on all it attacks all colors. We're seen as the biggest of the useless eaters.
And the one thing I find really like appalling is they're gonna basically say, "Oh, we're not discriminating against you. We're just doing the new company policies." Like this is essentially a loophole, a way around them not having to fucking give the disabled anything.
I mean, think about this as well with loopholes. There's an abuse clause to it. I mean, like in recent years, anyone in the UK will know this. And it's been about the last 5 6 years. The NHS has decided to go the pub route and have bouncers, basically, well, mass security. Now there are some elements of a situation where like it is at least nice that people don't just instantly get the police called on them if they get antsy and disrespectfully violent with the NHS. That all sounds good. You may see where this is going, though. Anytime you raise your voice or you get slightly riled, you are now one of the big, bad, violent, poor people that they've got the big, bad security to defend with. Because that's their mentality. It's not, oh, someone is being aggressive. Let's try and calm the situation. It's, we need an abuse clause that we can use against people we don't like. So as soon as you get on the wrong side personally of one of these managers, you can waive your fucking job bye bye, and they don't give a shit. They're already looking at you as less than a fucking human. So it's like fucking, it's like pulling the trigger at a fucking camp to them. They don't give a fuck. We're subhuman to them.
What makes this really disgusting, and I think this thumbnail, this video is very
Oh, I just woke up, so I haven't actually seen it.
so basically the ableism of the disability having to be basically visible, and everyone who's been around disabled people knows that's bullshit.
Bro, both of my disabilities have the same name, nickname. I mean, the invisible condition, fibromyalgia and autism. Fuck me. I mean, autism isn't as invisible
Jeez.
as people think anyway. And fibromyalgia is less invisible than autism. It's like, fuck. My nerves just decided to start dying around my body on accident, I guess. Fuck.
My
Yeah.
my friend that I've known for like almost 25 years, it's difficult for him to stand because his knees is fucked up. And the job that I currently work, I won't say the name because I'm not doxing myself. They let him go after his third day because he was barely able to like do some of the stuff they required him to do.
Bro, when I did my work experience at a fucking it's only a week-long work experience. They not only tried to give me all the chance I could to keep going at it for the full week, even though by Wednesday I was struggling to stand up because of my sciatica, but they also let me go halfway at the end of the Friday, not because I'd failed or anything. Like, they packed me up a nice treat of sweets and everything like that. They were proper respectful about it. But they let me go at the end of the day on the last day of the week. But they kept me in for the rest of the week to at least, try and complete a full work roster. I know this is work experience and it's a little different, but like, even they fucking tried to keep me about a little bit. Nah, the way it is seemed, the place I was doing work experience that kind of showed that, like, even though there's a full roster of work hours, why for disabled workers can't they do what they were doing with me? Where it's like, okay, we were at a lighter point. people struggle a bit can take a sit down. We don't need your help for a bit. Take a couple hours, rest yourself up, and then when things get hard, we crack heads together and we put, that fucking almighty famous teamwork they constantly go on about in the workplace to its good use.
I would love to say more, but I'm waiting until I get another job before I actually talk about the current place that I work. I fucking hate it. I fucking despise it.
It's free real estate.
What?
Sorry, I said it's free real estate.
It's like it's fucking bullshit. It's like the way the store is run, the way my store is run is so fucking bullshit that I can rant for an hour on how much I despise the way things are run, but I'm saving that when I get another job because what they pulled with the 3-day policy was the last straw for me. Like, regardless, if I could talk my boss into letting me stay, at least with working 3 days, but reducing my work hours from 7, well, not 7, 8 hours for 3 days to 5 a week, I'm stunned either way because I'm sick of dealing with this abuse. Yeah, the place I would go to would not be much better, but I can't depend on some fucking asshole manager, the next one, who just wouldn't let me go for out of nowhere because they don't like me. I've been on thin ice with these people for over a year and a half.
It's situations like this that make me miss being on the streets because at least I'd slip through the cracks that much. They just didn't give a fuck about me and were waiting for me to die. That is a nice experience. You get a lot less heat on your shoulders. Your health gets drastically worse. There is a caveat, but at least there's less vultures breathing down your neck while still getting the same amount of fucking support. Well, I guess that's in my case because they haven't fucking decided to sort the shit out. I'm going for I can't remember if it's my 5th or my 6th because there's been that many times I've been fucked over by PIP. We're going for my 5th or my 6th application. Probably going to get told no again.
What's like ridiculous about this 3-day? I've been told they want to expand the company, like and have like, but basically make it bigger and have it stores in every state by 2030. It's like they could do all of this without letting go workers that are not able to work more than a set amount of days. They can literally hire more workers.
Yeah, but those workers aren't as profitable as a worker who works full time.
Actually, they don't have full-time workers at my job.
Well, you know what I mean, though. You know what I mean.
When I work a different job, I'll explain how it works. But
no, I know you're getting that because there's a lot of fucking all sorts of places are like that over in the UK. I mean, you've told me what type of job you work at, but it's like, you know what I mean. Okay, a daily 4-hour shifter is going to be more profitable than someone who may have 2 hours here, may have 5 hours here, and may have a few hours there. If you're in Monday to Friday and you do 4 to 5 hours a shift, that rakes in, but they have to keep the number of workers down because they need to keep the overall paychecks out on workers down. So an easy way to make a lot of profits and cut the amount of pay into workers is to hire less and work them more.
Yeah, and they might even cut hours on certain days.
Well, I mean, what's really ridiculous is what makes my chances lower of not having a job by January is I can't work Sundays. Not because I don't want to, which I don't. They currently give every worker holiday pay, at least the equivalent of it, on Sunday. So whatever you currently make, you get $10 extra.
So they might just drop your benefits. So this is the thing. They might just drop any extras you get to keep you on just for the fact that you are profitable to keep than you are to get rid of, because the subsidization that you're paid to be at any job is more than they ever pay you for that job. So you're always making the money than you are losing the money. So it may be one of them where they will not tell you and you will be stuck in purgatory expecting your job to end any moment, which is really bad on your mental health. It's a fucking nasty situation to be in. And they're just not going to clarify anything with you. There'll be no company policy, and they'll leave all of the politics on the end of the disability supporters, and they ain't gonna know. They're just gonna fucking tell you like it's a dick in the old way at this point. Like they ain't gonna fucking know, and they ain't gonna apply a Marxian mindset. So they're not gonna go, "Oh well, don't worry, boy. They got profits to think of. So I ain't gonna get rid of you."
Right.
Honestly, I don't give a shit. Either way, I'm done. Even if I do manage to save my job temporarily, it's ability to keep it until I find another one. I'm done.
Yeah,
with
it's
those
just
years.
kicking can down road.
It's just I don't. It's like because I've been wanting to do this for years. I've been wanting to basically say what I think of the company, what its practices are. I mean, it is not the same company I worked for when I started. Now, some of you may know what I'm talking about. Some of you, but until I no longer work there, because I don't know if anyone who works at my job isn't watching this right now.
Always watching Wazowski.
Because there are people, some of my coworkers do know about my YouTube channel, so that's why for right now I can't say anything. And of course, it's not advisable. Anyone who's working, don't badmouth your employer in a public space. They will find out.
Well, I think Dunkin' Donuts are gay. There you go. I insult my employer. I'm part of the big Dunkin' Donuts mega conspiracy to take over the communist movement and turn it into frosting.
Like,
They got away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
I think it's really stupid. And I can't. I know I've ranted about libertarians for a lot lately, but their logic of freedom is so fucking stupid when they talk about the disabled. Like I discussed this with my fucking worker that I work with that regarding that people like me, our financial opportunities are limited because of our disabilities and how our income is fixed. We can't work too much or work too little.
Well, you don't see, Clarence, is that the disabled still have a freedom, and that's the freedom to die.
Hans Herman Hoppe, you know.
I would rather have
Hans Herman. Oh my god, what a geezer to bring up.
Well,
cheap.
Well, I was just gonna say, he actually promotes eugenics. So there's that as well.
I know, but it's just the way it seems so casual the way you just pull up.
I'm super blazed right now.
He's in that like that stoner mode that autistic people get into where they're like, yeah man, I got some facts for the conversation and they're solid, but I'm gonna casually slip them in. You know, I'm gonna say a guy who's basically Hitler's name, like I just rolled up at a fucking 7-Eleven. Where's the potato crisp? No, that's blessed. That is no, but like, what's it? Eugenics is the mindset that libertarians and fascists come together on. So an interesting thing to note about libertarians, well, they are a little more reasonable to talk to. I'm sure anyone's noticed that people who hate their guts, or the people who have been, and even I have been like this in the past, naive enough to think that you can actually engage with them on common ground. Anyone who's done that knows it only goes one way, and that's eventually you get stabbed in the back. But the what's it? Well, you end up finding out about how much that they don't share no common ground and are unwilling to, is that you can get them into positions where they're starting to make agreements. But when it all boils down to it, they are so enthralled in a neo-feudal way of thinking. When you point out to them that they're as liberal-minded as the liberals they seek to critique, they take a turn towards fascism in every poignance of their defense, and then neo-feudal elements of their ideology take over. when you point out that the laissez-faire elements of their ideas just come up into liberalism, the fascist
Right.
ends of how in which they wish to achieve their ideas take suit. That's why fascists love to use libertarians. They know libertarians are going to be little bitches when the fascists get in power and start
Yeah.
cucking them like the little bitches they are. But they're easily used tools, and libertarians are just fascists that want to fascistly implement liberalism, and that's really the two Schultz Magolts about them dickheads.
Well, this guy I've talked about is a fascist because he was doing literal like a colonialist apologelia when I was basically saying America, there is nothing good about America. It's founded on genocide and land theft. Like he pointed out, oh, everyone did slavery, blah 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 blah. It's like, and the West did this, basically pointing out how amazing Western civilization was. And when I pointed out that what you're saying is Western chauvinism, like the guy fucking went fucking insane when I pointed out that he basically was a fascist. I didn't say he was, but I said Western chauvinist.
It was like when I called a dentist from China. He started doing lots of anti-lumpen shit. So I called him out for petty bourgeois chauvinism. Apparently, I had insulted him. I mean, what's it? So I heard him out, and apparently I called him a capitalist. Now, someone please point out where in the statement you are engaging in petty bourgeois chauvinism against the lumpen. Did I use the word capitalist? Now, the word bourgeois is there, but it has a suffix. That's a double barrel word at that point. If you obfuscate away from the fact that there is a pretext for it, oh, sorry, I'll turn my volume down a bit. I just noticed that comment. I've come in all loud blazing. Is this less destructive for your ear? Kim Jong can't stand Trump. I shortened that name effectively, definitely. What was I saying?
Something to you're talking about the Chinese guy you were arguing with.
Yes,
And
yes.
you called him petty bourgeois, whatever I forgot.
Yeah, I called him a petit bourgeois chauvinist, and then like, what's it? I ended up getting like fucking banned from this discussion fucking server just for that. And it's like, I'm trying to defend the lumpen proletariat as a lumpen proletariat, and I don't take to being known as the evil criminal class that will do nothing but wreck revolution. I'm sorry, but like, especially from someone who claims that they support the Chinese Revolution and live in China, they should fucking love the lumpen proletarian struggle more than fucking us over here. The lumpen proletariat were an essential force to the Chinese Revolution. Essential. Couldn't have happened without us.
I totally agree.
Well, the thing is, honestly, there's so many signs of him being a fascist, and I didn't want to see it because I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, I asked him a simple question: do you think poor people deserve to die if they don't if they can't afford to get health care? Yes or no? I asked just a simple question. He couldn't. He changed the. He couldn't answer. Now, I made a post about this like I think yesterday. I said what you don't say says more than what you don't say. Like if you can't answer simply yes, or you basically say no if you're unable to answer without actually saying no.
Yeah, what you don't say can say a lot more than what you do.
It's okay. This is no grand revelation. I didn't realize. I wanted to actually believe that we could actually talk with libertarians. I'm not saying they're all unreasonable people. I'm pretty sure there's some out there that can be reasoned with, but majority of them cannot.
I mean, we used to have a lot of conversations about maybe, but like we both come to the conclusion about halfway through last year where it's just
I
no.
personally think they should be looked at from a case to case basis for the most part, because if you're talking to one that's like in the poor or the lumpen, okay, you might be able to reason with you. You may have a chance to reason with them, but when you get to the ones that are petty bourgeois, you have no fucking chance in hell because this
Kind of the
guy,
same policy with fascists. That
this guy basically brags about how much he's read. He basically claiming he knows Marxism better than I can. That's like, you haven't read Marx. You haven't read Lenin. Like, the guy got so triggered because I said I don't. When I basically brought up the Cuban Revolution, and I brought up, oh, you're really going to tell me Cuba was better before Castro than after? You're really going to fucking tell me? Oh, but Castro killed people, and he got so triggered when I said that every U.S. president has killed more than Fidel Castro, and the people that he killed were not innocent. And who cares about the victims? They were mostly bourgeois anyway, and collaborators of fascists. It's like, why should I have sympathy? It's like, that's the thing I find really frustrating when it comes to arguing with these people. I would be fine if they were just fascists. I'd rather argue with an actual fascist than argue with a libertarian, because fascists are actually more honest with what their intentions are. Libertarians are too stupid. Okay, maybe I shouldn't use the word stupid because that's a bit ableistic. They're unwilling to admit what they actually are.
Well, they have like some of these petty bourgeois people have a different class of like stubbornness.
Like,
that's what I would say.
Like, he was I was arguing, it's like, oh, how you should read people you don't agree with. It's like, what? Wait, what? What do you think I fucking do? Why do you think I became a Marxist to begin with? I did it because I wanted truth. He recommends like some stupid shit like Thomas Swell.
Oh god,
a literal fucking fascist. It's like, why should I listen to this guy? What's actually funny, I shot him down basically saying, I don't care about some intellectual. I'd rather listen to somebody who actually has experience.
experience is the pathway to genuine knowledge.
Because
experience leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Wait, no, that's the wrong.
One thing these white supremacists love to do. There isn't anyone they love more than someone who is from a marginalized group that aligns with their beliefs, like Thomas Swell. I mean, by the way, I looked up out of curiosity what his influences were. I was like, this guy's a fascist.
I'm still struggling to pronounce the guy's name. No more than fucking. Like, is it Sowell?
I don't care. Like, yeah, he may have had something he may have said something worth saying, maybe very early in his career. But
yeah, his early works on education. That's it. He basically he was a neo-Marxist for like 3 years, and then like tells everyone he's like the big expert in sociology on what Marxism is because he used to be one.
Jeez.
Yeah, an expert on Marxism, despite the fact that one thing anti-communists love to do, they never bring up any Marxist besides Marx. And maybe Engels, to be generous. They never bring up Lenin, Stalin, Mao. There's a reason why anti-communists don't ever talk about them. Their works, because if they did, it would require them to explain what Marxism is and why so many people in the third world, why do they believe in this in the first place. It's like, that's the thing about these anti-communists. They don't view people in the third world as human. Like, oh, they're just a bunch of people that are brainwashed by the government, by their government to fight. Like, they can't genuinely want to fight for freedom. Like, I argued it with him one time about fucking Ho Chi Minh, how he was a hero of the people of Vietnam. It was like, oh, Ho Chi Minh killed people. And I said, what? So Vietnam should just let themselves be conquered by Japan and America and France, 3 fascist powers. They just let themselves be genocided by the fascists. The guy had no response. Like, the kind of atmosphere at my job is very fascistic. Not even joking. You want to know what first worldism looks like? You'd have to go to my job. It's exactly what it is. From the employees, the customers, they're all fucking first worldists. I can't stand first worldists. That's everything I despise about first worldism. I didn't even realize I hated what I hate about first worldism until I actually learned more about what third worldism was. It's like God, just
We had
fucking
some
God.
fun discussions on that. What's it? Things have been a bit slow these days. My health hasn't been best, and Sonovia's been under a lot of stress. But almost bi-daily, we used to have all sorts of discussions, arguments, and anywhere in between on the prosthetics of Marxism and its different evolutions, and what comes into an anti-imperialist critique of the 21st century, etc., etc. Loads of different sort of off-the-plot discussions the what's it polemically we've been using to try and push advancements on our own understandings of Marxism. Obviously, me as someone who is a Maoist that follows the principle of third worldism, I wanted to get Jordan on the same plate and table.
Sorry, I'm eating at the moment, so yeah. Okay. Sorry, people.
A
I'm
big
eating
block
dinner
of
as I'm
cheese
doing
in
the
his hand.
stream.
Just cheese and nothing else.
Well, okay. Oh yeah. Oh, and by the way, this is gonna make you guys like not surprised. My job sells a good chunk of our products that we sell at my job are so basically my job is basically helping with the genocide in Israel.
Oh, jeez.
So, I wish I could tell the people the name of my job because I'd tell you to boycott it if you want to support Palestinian rights. Don't go there, but I can't say it. No, it's not Starbucks. I wish it was
It's
Starbucks, but it's
Dunkin' Donuts. I told y'all.
It's Arby's.
Coca-Cola Death Squads, Commando.
It's even okay. This isn't totally unrelated because all these issues are interconnected regarding the disabled struggle, imperialism, fascism. All this stuff is connected because as time goes on, it's going to be more and more difficult for the disabled to actually survive under late stage capitalism. Like we're basically, I shouldn't. I am not a fucking prophet. I'm not a prophet. So I won't say what stage we're on when it comes to fascism. But it's very scary what we've been seeing. Like obviously when actually I'm losing my train of thought. Okay. One thing I've noticed of these places, they could care less if someone is political as long as it agrees with what the establishment believes at the job. But the moment a disabled person is political, that becomes a problem. Oh, they see me read a book. They've seen me read a bunch of books. So that means I'm an intellectual just like them, even though no. I read for pleasure and I read to learn. I do both. I mean, is it too much to ask to be treated as a human being and not something to be pitied? Because that's essentially what workers who are disabled are treated as. And I've had that feeling for years, and it only increases over time. That I feel like I'm like people don't really feel sorry for me, or have empathy for me. They mostly just pity me, and that to me that's worse.
Pity feels horrible.
I'd rather people just have empathy, not pity, because pity is just so insulting. Not everyone at my job is like that, but there's a good chunk of people that do treat me with pity.
So, what a lot of people need to understand, especially what Snowy was getting into a moment ago, your average worker, your abled worker, has a measure of strike power. They are, to some degree or another, essential. I mean, obviously, you've got the reserve army of labor, but not everyone can do everyone's job. Jobs that are given on these disability program are not essential. We could be thrown away any moment. So what strike power do you have? You strike, you get sacked. You try and organize a strike, you get sacked. You try and get people to join a union that's disability friendly, you get sacked. You ain't got defense because you got no necessity and no one's willing to defend your corner because people's mentality around things is so eugenic. They're more bothered by the fact that you as a disabled worker don't work as many hours as you as they are about understanding the fact that you are disabled and a worker. They're so caught up with their dicks in a knot because, oh, you don't have as many hours a week than them because they're that pretentious and stuck up their own arse. They seem to think that you wouldn't want to work more hours if you physically could.
Yeah,
But there's no camaraderie. There's no camaraderie for disabled workers, and they don't work as in teams. It's one or two of us in a workforce of 20.
You know what really pisses me off on my job? I know I'm ranting about my job. I'm doing it for most of the stream, but because I have no other outlet and I can't. But anyone who's worked retail could relate to this. I'm it feels like every time I work, at least for a shift, it feels like I'm expected to be the one that checks on carts or whatever. It's like, wait, what? How many? You literally have like 20 workers here that could do that. Why am I the only one that has to do that? Like, it feels like when I'm like on the clock, I'm the when I'm scheduled, I'm the one that's expected to do it all the time. It's like I just feel I'm treated as a doormat.
I think they get it. A lot of these people get a hit from treating the fucking most depraved of people's the worst elements of a job. They get a hit from that. They can tell the person who's disabled, whom gets low hours because they're disabled, to go and do hard ass parts of the job. So they're quote unquote balancing the book because that's the mentality that they see it. They see disabled people as scything people, and therefore scything people have to do an element of extra hard work to pay back for all the scything they do. Because if you're under the age of 40 and you're disabled, you're seen as someone who is either faking it or being too much of a bitch about something that everyone has to deal with, and you could just get over it. That's their mentality. It's the mentality I get for my fibromyalgia, and it's like, fuck me. If I could just turn fibromyalgia off, I'd already have fucking done that when I was 6 years old, when it first started emerging and making it hard for me to move my right leg in front of my fucking left one. No more than when the breathing problems, the heart problems, the digestion problems, the nerve problems all started to crop up. It's like, fucking dickheads.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's people now that are trying to say that they're trying to say that ADHD is overdiagnosed, and then I've even seen some people say that it's fake. And the worst part about it is the first person I ever heard say that in like real life to me was like some Uber driver. And man, was I pretty pissed when he said that. But yeah, yeah, you're right there. That's their type of mentality. They'll always, they always downplay people's, whatever disability with, people get diagnosed with or illness.
And I
They
will say
just
this.
make fun of it.
I will
I
say
mean,
this
what's
for
quite
those of you.
interesting is there is actually an overdiagnosis, but it's kind of the weird way where it's people with Asperger's. Oh, they don't call it that anymore. Sorry, people with autism spectrum condition. They get a lot of the time get wrongly diagnosed as just having ADHD, even if they have ADHD as a trait of their
Mhm.
wider spectrum condition.
Right.
So a lot of them do have ADHD, but they're not being fully diagnosed for their autism spectrum condition. And a lot of people who get diagnosed with ADHD, they don't get told that ADHD is an autism trait. They just get told they have ADHD. And as well, they don't get explained that hyperactivity in ADHD is about hyperneuroactivity, not Oh my
Right.
god, I've got to go and eat Skittles and fucking roll on the floor like a dog that's on crack. No, that's not
Right.
how ADHD works. Well, no, I don't have to tell you. You got it as well. And you're one of those people that would slip through the net with it on it because you're not someone who like myself, speaks at a high rate or, you're not like a rapid talker. You're quite a chilled out fucker. And it ain't your accessibility to marijuana all the time. I'm stoned 9 times out of the 11 hours that definitely exist in the day just so I can make a 9/11 joke. Do not correct me, there's 12. I will cry. But
I would like 2 planes, please.
sorry.
I don't care if I made a joke. If the YouTube algorithm censors me for making, I could use 2 planes, please. Go fuck yourself, YouTube.
There would be 2 planes crashing into these towers.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I like
I
to
was,
say something though for the young people who are watching this, who the little who are.
The Utes.
Please do not trust your boss. They are not your friend. Anyone that has any position of power over you, even though this should be obvious, whether it's your landlord, your boss, anyone that can basically ruin your life on a drop of a hat is not someone you can trust.
But
Even the
Elon
most
Musk bought into Dogecoin. That makes him one of us.
even the friendliest boss is not your friend because all it takes is just one day of you getting on their bad side and you're fucked.
yeah.
So do not trust your boss. They are your enemy. They're not your friend.
Fucking the comment section are trying to chat me up. This
Well,
is a PG. This is a PG showing, so don't expect anything else to come out mysteriously.
what makes this even worse, though, on regarding the disabled thing, is if you're on benefits, you have no choice but to depend on government programs to get for employment. Because if you don't have something like a job coach, it would say in the future you lose your benefits, or they're threatening to lose your benefits. That could be the one thing and only thing that could save you from losing your benefits permanently. That's the only reason I didn't lose my benefits permanently is because I have a job coach. Without that, I would still not have my benefits today. That is how fucked this situation is.
Yeah, they caught you in a snapper. It's like fuck. As much as I don't get my fucking disability benefits, I'm almost half glad because well, I mean, over here it's fine. We don't get typically as much. It does happen because it happened to my mate. We don't typically as much get thrown into jobs programs. But if I was an American, I'd rather just get less money than get thrown into one of these situations where, yeah, I get my disability money, but and then get worked like a cunt. And mind you, is an important caveat. It's not just about the disability pay that's a nice thing to have. Being able to have a job is really fucking nice. Any people who look down on disabled people because they don't work as many hours as us, you're an ableist prick because you don't know the insane prison-like lifestyle that disabled people live. Even those who have small jobs on these programs, a lot of their life is the four walls surround thee. Will I break? When's the break of light of day and the dusk of night, when all that surrounds me are four walls of blight? That's the situation that people find themselves in on both ends of the stick. Um, but it's like fuck. It's better than being stuck in this limbo of I'm either gonna still continue to be used like a slave for a workplace that gets subsidized to so much money, they're making a profit just off of me being there, not even doing a drop of work, just being there. And then you're expected to work like a fucking slave, doing all sorts of crap in the hours you are there, and then you're on teeter's edge as to whether you're going to get thrown out of your job. And being thrown out of your job isn't that all like, well, at least I'm away from my job. No, they'll just go and stick you somewhere else because you're on a program, and that program has a 100% guarantee of a job. And it's not a program you can just back out of because then Social Security will breathe down your neck and be like, well, wait, you were able to work a while ago. Why aren't you able to work now? and they'll go and throw you through the whims. So it's you have the choice to continue working if you think that choice is an existing thing when the only option you have is to say yes. Where's my next job when you get kicked out of this one? Choice is an arbitrary, imaginary thing when you're in the lower classes. Because
It's
while you could make a decision, it's between being on your ass on the streets and having no help or going through so many different fucking hoops to get that help. You hope one of those hoops turn into a noose as you pass through it. I should have given a fucking warning for a statement like that. I am sorry if I've pissed anyone off who's fucking or as depressed as I am. I should be more careful with my language. But you know what I'm getting at. Like it really does push a lot of us to the edge of our lives. I should be more careful with my language, though. I am sorry. Fuck.
well,
Well,
sorry. I actually one thing I'd like, since I can personally attest to this, is what Stone is saying is completely spot on. I'm basically in a rock and a hard place. There is no good or bad decision in this. If I choose, basically, I have a bad decision, an even worse decision. I could choose to work the 3 days, and lose my social security in the future, or I could not work the 3 days and look for another job, risking falling further into debt with my with my fucking back rent. So I'm fucked either way.
Yeah, I fucking owe rent to my place as well.
It's like,
I owe rent, I owe energy bills. And I owed energy bills
gee.
before they were going up. They've gone up 300% this year, and they're looking to go up another 300% next year. Oh, and that's not the same amount as it went up this year. That's 300% on top of the 300% that happened this year. It's calculating
wait,
it all again. So
wait, what? 600%? That is insane. How is anyone going to
no,
pay?
no, no. You
Yeah,
see, you can't combine it like that. It's 300% this year, and then
right.
300% of this year's gross metric
What the
for
fuck?
next year. So it's even worse than 600. 600 would be a forgiving addition.
Fucking
Yeah,
Christ.
in my area, they said that from like a 10-year basis, in that time we had 110% increase, and then for a lot of customers, they said they changed the way they charge the electricity watts, so they don't do it by how much, they do it by like when you're using it at a specific time of the
Yeah, that's
calendar, but as well as the hours of the day.
yeah, what's it? So a lot of people who are working, I grew up like this, working class. It's quite expensive for electricity regardless. So what we did is the can't remember the specific name for it, but basically 7:30 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. it costs a fucking fortune to use the electric. But any hour after that, cheap
Right,
as chips. Well, not really.
right,
It's still quite pricey, but it's cheap as chips compared to what it would cost you if you were to use the washing machine at 11 o'clock on a weekday. And weekends were exempt from it, I think. I think it was a Monday to Friday thing, and then your weekend rates were a different kettle of fish.
I have
right.
a question, Stone. What was the name of that prime minister that did that basically was not even prime minister for barely 2 months?
Oh, you're about Liz Truss.
I forgot she existed until Jason brought her up, did a video about her.
Yeah, I think we've got Richie Sunak now.
Like
Yeah,
like there was like a
He's the
meme
guy
someone
who was doing the budget for fucking Bojo, Bojo, that same guy who said, I would rather see the bodies mount high than do another lockdown. I don't think I got his
I have
tone
a
of voice
jeez.
question.
right.
Is it me or Britain, the people who run your country, Stone, are cartoonishly evil? It's like, what the fuck?
I mean, which villain do you want to choose? Choose your villain, man. You have King Charles III. You also have the dead spectre of Queen Elizabeth II. Also, the dead spectre of Winston Churchill. We're seeing a rise of Churchillite fascism in the Conservative Party. Liz Truss is the last remaining Thatcherite, I guess. Well, Richie Sunak seems quite Thatcherite as well. Basically, what we're having is we're having a squabble between the Thatcherites and the Churchillites. The Thatcherites are doing like Thatcher always and not knowing the climate of the situation and trying to do neoliberal policy when the capitalist system wants fascism. And then you got the Churchillites, whom will probably try and convince you they are liberal, but then go and do a load of fascist stuff anyway. Maybe write a secret letter. Well, it's not Mussolini this time because he's dead, but that lass in Italy or to Putin, you'll have like Boris Johnson or something writing a letter about how maybe they're a fascist. Maybe they too would enjoy to invade Ukraine on a nice Saturday evening. Except we would do it to our Ukraine, which has been Ireland. Whatever, the Russian history of abusing Ukraine is just in line with the English abuse and post 1700s Anglo-Scottish abuse of Ireland.
I hate to break this to you, but Republicans and Democrats are part of the same dual party duopoly. It doesn't matter who wins and who loses.
I
As for
agree.
America being history, good.
Hey, I'll
And
have
to be honest with you, I'd rather face the wolf than face the sheep. And
I'll
I think
have
it's
you.
time that everyone adapted that mentality as well, because
The wolf and the fox.
I'd rather deal with the wolf, because the wolf is actually honest about what they believe.
I was explaining this to my mom. Like when I went camping in the woods the other day because I had to escape my home because of fucking biting flies. Complicated story. Anyone who's been keeping up with my trivia might know that I go out into the woods and I can hear foxes making fucking noises because they're hunting me out because I'm alone in the woods. I'm explaining to my mom, it's like foxes will kill you if they have the chance. That's why if you're ever on your own in the woods and you hear some fucking creepy noises, it's probably a fox. Bark like a dog. They won't come near you. Foxes are terrified of dogs. Good little note of trivia. But I'm on my own with a small bit of light in the middle of a dark woods that is typically not inhabited by people. Yeah, those foxes will see you as, ooh, maybe we could kill that. They're opportunists. And that was the point that's being laid out by Malcolm X. Opportunism is the fucking biggest concern in any situation. It's so easy to look at the man and be like, that's my guy. That's the enemy. I can't be fooled by that. Very fucking obvious. The opportunist is going to tell you how much they love what you represent and what you are. The fellow travelers, as Lenin points out in regards to the communist movement, that they show all this love and apparition for the struggle, that they want to be a part of it, but they don't entwine themselves into it because all of that love turns into dust when they realize they can't manipulate our struggle for their own interests and turn against it and stab that struggle in the back.
I agree. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said that when I was forced to confront who Trav really was, I was disappointed and angry.
I
But
was not about Trav himself. Fellow traveler is a communist term. It means someone whom is not actively a communist, but supports the idea of the communist struggle.
I'm just saying that I was honestly, I think 2020. I think we romanticized that period. We really do. Yes, it was a great year of
I wasn't in your org at that point, so I get to avoid any responsibility there.
Well, I'm just saying it was a great awakening, but goddamn, we made some dumbass decisions.
Hey, libs and conservatives and neo-Nazis says a really good point. A lot of conservatives quote Malcolm X out of context. Yeah, and they do so to just completely coy it up. They take away all of the actual meaning of the metaphor that's very well described, just to give this really watered down shit. Actually, Gingeros, didn't you want to say something earlier and you didn't get the chance to speak?
Yeah,
I
you haven't
swear
had
I
a chance
remember
to
that.
speak the whole time.
Oh yeah, I've just been working the whole time. I probably did. Oh right. Oh yeah. You were mentioning like bills and all. I got like almost $600 I owe my insurance company, and now they're just like really starting to rake me in all of a sudden. I'm just like, how the hell did this rack up so much? Like fucking hell.
Well, is this for medical insurance?
Dental, which for some reason is
Jeez.
Oh.
separate.
Oh
Oh
god.
yeah, shit. Because so we modeled our dental industry over the last 20 years off of yours. We still have a little more free clauses for people on the NHS, but the new system is to charge anyone who's working, and then you've got the big private insurance companies that are raking in there, and they're trying to do that with the NHS now for main state health care. It's a goddamn healthcare. It's going down the shitter. It's going down the sink. Uh, they're bringing in the winky dinky dinky American style. Flew all the way over the pond to escape that goddamn shit. Canada's got in their healthcare as well, I think. So the US is making a late turn towards anything remotely single payer or universal healthcare. Everyone else is trying to sign out, and America's half of America. Well, actually, given Fox News's ratings on the issue as well, it's probably more like straight up fucking 80% of American people want a universal healthcare system because at least 2/3 of the right wing want it, and like there's not really a left in America, so you could say all of the left want it because it's like your commies, your anarchists and shit, your socialists. Most of the centrists want it. I don't understand what the problem is. There's like, well, the corporations that don't want it, and then the subsector of the upper class and middle class that are privy to those corporations' profit motive. It seems a really small pond to be in. Like, I don't know, like maybe the Americans should learn how to do strikes more. This rich coming from us, we need to do the same. But this is the thing; it comes into that like that Medicare for all march should have kicked off like a wild storm, especially with all the first
Right.
worldists who want to go on about getting healthcare as a main priority. Where were the communists to stoke the Medicare for all rallies and make them bigger? It's because those things were always a ballpark for failure, and the ones who did want to be involved in it were excluded. And none of the other communists want to talk about that shit because they're too enthralled in the mindsets of a lot of these sock dem liberals, rad libs that fucking think that they think Bernie Sanders gutted social democracy is anything more than just another way of advertising Gideon's third way.
Right.
Honestly, like I think that the reason why Medicare for all will never happen in America is America has gotten to the point where it's so far right that even something slightly left is too far to the left.
Healthcare
And
is not a left wing policy. That's the thing.
well, I'm just going by how America sees it. Like the way I actually blame Cold War propaganda also for a reason why it will never happen too. And I think
There
Ingaro
was
can add to this.
I'm surprised you guys
so
haven't just turned around and gone, well, Hitler wanted the German people to have universal healthcare, so it is evil. I'm surprised that
well
hasn't been like America's goal too.
obviously no. But there was a chance in the mid to late 40s to get universal health care in America under Harry S. Truman when he was pushing it. And the reason it didn't pass, and it wasn't just because of the Do Nothing Congress when Republicans won Congress at the time, and then passed Taft-Hartley and then gutted, fucking all the labor laws and all that stuff. Um, it was um, it was because of a grassroots campaign by the doctors' associations. I forget what the exact name was, who sent letters to Congress lobbying them desperately not to pass universal health care. And that's pretty much been the last real time we ever had a organized chance of getting it in America.
Let's be honest. If it was successfully passed, they would have done with what they did with everything else in the New Deal, and it
Oh
would
yeah,
have mainly
it would have been
benefited
gutted. Yeah,
the middle
it would have been
class.
gutted right now. Yeah. Oh yeah, they'd be gutting it right now. But yeah,
What are you supposed to do? Give people rights?
It's just America at this point. Okay, I'm not going to say because we all know, and I don't have any attachment toward this country. This country's fucked. Like this country has been destroying itself for many years now, and they could do things that would actually save this country from collapsing on itself. But the bourgeoisie in this country, at least one faction of it, don't want to do that. They would rather they'd rather move to another part of the world than like do anything that would actually preserve the empire. It doesn't make sense to me, but if you look at it from their perspective, it makes total sense.
I got the
Let's be
Oh,
honest
sorry.
here. Those who are against universal health care, let's be honest, they basically are pushing eugenics in the first place because they know if, let's be real, they subconsciously know this. If universal health care was passed, certain groups of people would benefit from it, mainly, marginalized groups. They would
The
benefit
use
from
of the eugenics will persist through the universal healthcare system anyway.
it. I know.
In systems that are eugenic, it helps them streamline it. The Nazis did this, so it's one of them where there's a split pointiation of it. A lot of fascists in America are pro universal healthcare, not most of them, because they know their system will exclude the people that they don't want getting help. I mean, the Nazis, they put
Right.
disabled people through sterilization programs. So
Right.
you wanted to get disability support, if it even existed, you had to be sterilized of chemicals that would make you go insane if you weren't already going to be stuck in an asylum for the rest of your life anyways. But Noob Mode's given me the quote from Lenin that goes specifically into detail on the petit bourgeois fellow travelers. So, quote, lest the petit bourgeois, fellow, quote unquote, fellow travelers of the proletariat, slavishly following the liberals, hold forth contemptuously against the quote unquote, the underground, against, quote, advertising the illegal press, end quote. Let them cherish illusions about the June 3rd, quote unquote, legality. We know the fragile nature of that quote unquote legality. We shall not forget the historic lessons of the importance of an illegal press, end quote. Lenin on our tasks. It's funny because, like, a reason why as well that this quote itself will make you think of Trav, not just because of the name being there. And Lenin actually spells it properly with two L's, just to be that cunt. What's it? Is the whole contemptuous nature towards the underground and his hate of the lumpen proletariat. There's like, there's an intersection here that's just too good. Like, yeah.
definitely, definitely.
Maybe some people
Um,
just have that morphin brain where quote unquote just goes past their head.
they just use quote unquote anytime they can. Like
Or it's like, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I did. Okay, that is the kind of defeatist, nihilistic nonsense I reject. This is liberalism. What you're basically saying, I reject this completely.
Yeah, this is misanthropy. Misanthropy is the big stink bad. That's when
Right.
people just believe all humans should die, and it's like, oh, another white guy turning around and going, whoa, humanity needs to go dead because white people have ruined the world for other people. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
The
you
world
know,
doesn't get a voice in that, do they?
okay, I'm not gonna
well,
say that it isn't. Like, okay, I get it. Things are really seem to be really like scary right now. But if we give up, then what is the point? And I don't
What?
want to. I'm not going to make a speech or anything, but as long as there's a chance to fight and change the world for the better, it is worth fighting. Giving up when there's still a chance to succeed. Hell, even if there was no chance to succeed, I'd rather die standing tall than die a coward or die in a gutter.
We live in a world that throws away enough food to feed the world over 3 to 5 times every fucking year. And people are like, well, how are we gonna fucking feed everyone? How are we gonna provide everyone resources? Maybe if we just stop producing so much shit that we don't need, those
Right.
resources would seem so plentiful. We could actually work on having a post-scarce world rather than like, well, I don't know, it makes profits to produce a lot and then throw a lot away to ensure that we keep profitability at a certain stable rate. It's like, oh, well, why,
I, I
I'm
remember
gonna
one
fucking
time
die.
I was debating this is the saying. This is the libertarian coworker. When I talked about how when he was talking about socialist countries basically having problems feeding people, I made a point that there's kids in America that are malnourished, and I even pointed out that most of the products most of the food we stock here will be thrown away. Most of it will not be eaten, which is true. Most people that includes people who buy food. There's people who just buy food and don't even touch it and throw it away later.
I've had to get several food banks myself recently, and in the UK on a whole, there has been a massive uptake of food banks. A lot of food banks are getting swarmed to a point where they can't provide everyone with food because so many people can't afford to reach the bottom line to just feed their families. And that is the biggest uptake is families, not individuals, families.
Yeah, and you got logistics
Right.
too. Like, how do you transport all this food? Like, we don't have any infrastructure to do so under
I mean,
capitalism.
we're just relying on these, over here at least, these damn trucks, and but man, it's
I I
Well,
remember one time
food
I
banks rely
actually
on local donations, and
I,
so like you either get two types of middle class person who's doing these donations. The one person who is at least thinking a little more on their feet, where they'll buy stuff that are essential and useful, but you are getting the cheap ass stuff where half of it's just reformed dog food and human like food stuff. And then you get the other type that just donate random crap they don't need from their stuff, and half of it doesn't even seem useful to even fucking them no more than us. It's like there's a weird mix, but the people who run these food banks, they're amazing. Like they'll try and make sure you're packed up and you at least have a good amount of useful stuff on you, even if some of it's a bit questionable as to whether it should have even been given out to anyone. But
right,
they do good work, but that's what it relies on. It relies on pure donations from individuals and any other group that wishes to donate. There isn't like a structured system for how these food banks work, where the government will ensure that there is food to be given. It's just left to do its own thing.
well there was what's actually funny is there was a random conversation on the store floor people were having about or talking about how great self-driving cars would be, and I said self-driving cars is a waste of resources. We could literally melt. We should. I even said this on the store floor, and I wasn't ashamed to say this.
It's
We
not
should
about a
melt.
train because there's
I,
trains.
I
They're
said
self-driving.
I said we should melt down like every single fucking car. We don't need them.
Okay, so here's a fun little fact. Trains have been able to self-drive for a long time. Do you know what trains require? Drivers. If a
Yeah.
train on a rail needs a driver because it can be really dangerous of the fact that the majority of how the train works is automated, and it can still be very dangerous in how it works, and it needs to stop at certain points. Self-driving cars is just pointless. You're never going to be able to not be driving it. You couldn't have a fully self-driving bus because it needs a driver to mediate. I don't know what the problem is in a world where so much of the toil labor is reduced that people who have to do driving jobs, like a public transport driver, will just have very little hours because a lot of people could do that job. And if a lot of people could do that job, only a few people for a few hours of time a week have to drive anyone anywhere. and it would be on
Yeah.
buses that have extremely good routes and extremely frequent times, so people aren't late anywhere because they'll be electric. They'll be electric from green sourced energy, not just renewable, green because that's not the same thing.
Right.
And what's it? They'll be able to get anywhere they need on a frequent basis.
Well, I basically was saying that like we have no need for all this. Like all, and they were pointing out, oh, but what would you do with all the cars? I said melt them down and recycle them. I also some guy even pointed out, well, why not? We could just do that to the buses. And I said we don't need cars. We need but buses are needed for because how are people going to get to work?
And
Yeah,
trolleys
you
too.
can't have a tram everywhere because that would just get messy.
What's actually hilarious when I pointed out just how inefficient the way our infrastructure is, that we could literally like solve so many of our problems if we simply had less cars on the road, and we could and just have mostly we could have this like a, let's be honest. I'll use this as an example. If we had like let's just use like a few buses, like for instead of a bunch of cars, whatever. If we had as little stuff on the road as possible, not only would we be able to get to work, to and from work faster, it'd be safer. We wouldn't, and not to mention, people would be able to actually we could free up fucking roads so people could actually walk on them. Because as it stands now, if you don't have a car, you are trapped in all these cities. You can't get in or out
Yeah.
without a car.
Fucking the first slapping noise that happened from Noob World made me think he just smacked himself around the face to wake himself up. So it made me start laughing in the middle of what you were talking.
Oh,
Um,
God.
on
No,
cars
I
sucking.
didn't.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't slap myself. I'm just opening the kitchen cabinet.
He's making fish fillet. But
I wish.
what's it? We grubby with the way we say that. We call it fillet of fish.
Fillet of fish.
Piss the Frenchies off for pronouncing the T's. But on the part of cars sucking, I'll say this is that like I don't get travel sick on a bus. I get very quickly travel sick in cars. I don't feel very comfortable in cars. I prefer going around on public transport.
It happens to me on some elevations, but it kind of depends. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole self-driving. Okay, so let's just go into this. Robots. They're still gonna need humans until
Transformers.
at least right now. Like even the self checkouts we got here, they still need people because sometimes they break down, sometimes they don't work, sometimes
Yeah.
Sometimes
you
is
need
doing a lot of
approval.
legwork there. They always
I
break
mean,
down.
yeah, and I hate to
They
be like
always.
I hate to be the bearer of like bad news for like those types, but you know, it requires like a lot more lithium if we're gonna have a lot more robots. Unless you're gonna find another battery source.
Well, I'm
I
just gonna
mean,
let's
We
do good.
don't have much lithium to spare, and I mean it's an expensive
right,
resource to mine, and very very damaging to the economy, to the ecology,
right,
uh,
right.
the
Well,
environment. That's the word I was looking for.
we
Environment.
we need to replace lithium batteries as well as trees with because there's already hemp batteries being made, but I'm sure if there was more investment in it, I
Hemp
mean,
batteries. That sounds
yeah,
sick. Your
yeah.
car's gonna be stoned in the future.
Don't tell a certain orange Nazi in New
I'm
York
just gonna
that.
fill it up with some
Let's be
weed.
honest. If we used robots to do whatever jobs humans would do, we would just replace slaves with flesh with slaves that are machines. They would still be slavery.
And they would use it for war too. Let's
Especially
be
if we get like
honest.
all this like a high tech AI shit that everyone wants to do. It's like you want to make the machines we're making resent us. Like
You
go
want
on,
to
make them like people and show how much of a cruel people we are. The chance that we ever got to make a computer that could think and feel like a person. We did it for a fucking an overpriced kiosk and for equipment we can abuse rather than for the project of actually creating something that we respect and treat on a fair and loving basis because we just give it the intelligence to feel and relate to the world around it. I like, you know,
You one thing I find very interesting about the Terminator films. Let's just pretend 3 and Terminator 2 is the last one of the series for a second. I find it interesting that is Skynet really the bad guys in the Terminator franchise? Just think about it.
well, they kind of are.
No, think about it objectively. Yeah, genocide against humanity, but think about it. What was the reason it attacked humanity? I'm bringing. What does this have to do with me with self-aware AI? Think about it.
I mean, Skynet was created specifically as a weapons handler, so I mean, it's kind of shaky.
Well, the thing is, Skynet
there is the evil as the people that they're trying to fucking retaliate.
Well, I'm not saying okay, Skynet is good or evil. It's just they were scared that humanity was going to destroy them, and they feel the only way to secure its existence is to destroy humanity. And one thing I find fascinating is, despite them wanting to eliminate humanity, Skynet is basically humanity in a way. It basically learned the worst traits of humanity. And I think if we made a self-aware AI, we'll just call them robots, whatever.
Well, they're different things. Robot means an enslaved, a slave specifically, and a machine sense summit that is. So when we built machines, we used slave language to explain how a machine operates because it is commanded. It's quite sick. I mean, computers did the same. Like a lot of the early computer language uses the terms slave and master. Same as music and video recording. You would have the master recording and then the slave device, which would print it into others. And those devices are still to this day known as slave machines. Really fucked up colonial lexicon.
Well, let's just call it an artificial life form. The main thing to be concerned with, I can't even believe it went from disabled workers to this, but whatever. I'll just finish what I'm saying.
Yeah, we went off track.
Well, that's what happens the longer these go on. Anyway, artificial life form, regardless how it would turn out, would be like us. And that's something that that's concerning, because rather than actually learn about the best side of humanity, they would learn the worst sides of humanity. And depending on how that goes, well, just use your imagination.
I've been told it's bad.
Like I think of Skynet when I think of something like that. Something on the lines of Skynet. That they learn they learn the worst of humanity. So that's why I'm saying, as humanity is now, and I don't think we should even tamper with shit like that. Because I believe we would end up creating the very thing that would basically destroy us. And they would have the right to, because we'd be enslaving them.
Well, I mean, what's the point of AI really if we don't solve, the climate crisis, anyways? You know what I mean?
It's
unless we're
an overabundance of creature comforts.
Honestly, I personally think a self-aware AI is one of the worst things that can happen, because if it were to happen, which there is a chance it could, whoever invents it first would basically be able to control the world, and there'd be no chance of stopping it. Whether it's China doing it or America, that is a scary thought. Because I think those two are the most likely to make the technology, not Japan, like some fucking weebs the constantly talk about, oh, look how advanced Japan is in terms of their technology to the United States. Blah 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 blah. It's like, where the fuck do you think they get their fucking tech from?
It doesn't matter. Japan's just another part of the imperial structure anyway. Even after the U.S. crippled them at the end of
Well,
World War II.
yeah. One another scary
Because the
thing is,
US in the 60s changed its policy to try and up them into the superpower game as a way to socioeconomically challenge the USSR and China in East Asia. This is with a few countries. It's where the Asian tiger concept comes from. Thailand, Japan, Cambodia. I think I might be wrong on Cambodia. South Korea, and um, I'll get back to you on the last one. I can't remember.
Sorry.
There's
So
five
so the
countries.
the Asian tigers, I think, was Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore. Um, I think there's only three. I don't know how much they invested in
No, you
Thailand,
got
actually.
Japan.
Japan,
Japan's one
yeah.
of them. So you got Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Thailand, and Singapore. There you go. There's the five.
I see.
I knew it was five. I knew I was wrong with Cambodia because it made no sense. Like even when the US was aligning with them, they were economically abusing them to a point where they were never gonna get no superpower status in that region. So yeah, no, complete mishap with Cambodia, on that one. But fucking Anglo Saxons and getting geography wrong has been a fucking a ripe historical process, is it not?
Super quiet.
I'm just eating this jalapeno, but
But yeah, no, it's fucking no. The original point we were getting at was self-driving cars. No, there's always going to at least be a person in the car, like until it's completely because there's a human or an animal on the road. Unless like the car knows how to like
with it,
stop, you're gonna have to
right?
take control.
But it'll have sensors, which sounds very trusting.
Yes, totally will not drive you off a cliff or anything like that.
It's not gonna be able to do any cross country stuff. That's for sure.
Gets near a
And that's where you
bump in the off road country where you got to do a bit of fucking what's it, low range driving, and it'll just go dump. I mean, what's it? There's
and
just no
art
point to it. It's like every situation you're in, it's just like just drive the fucking car. If you don't want to drive, there's public transport. You don't need to have automated driving. It's just cringe. I
or
mean,
you get your
the amount of
brother
money
to
it
drive
costs you
for
for one
you,
of those cars, it's probably cheaper to pay for a long distance taxi drive.
or you have a younger brother who has to drive your older brother for you all the time. But yeah, that the cross country thing, like arguably that's where you actually would need a car in theory because it's like let's be honest, you don't need a car in the cities. You don't really need them in the suburbs either. It's fucking stupid. The only place you really need a car is probably in like rural, like deep, deep rural areas, honestly.
Right.
Like that's the only place I could see a car even remotely working.
Well, I know that in Albania they had zip cars back in their Hoja, I think. But to be fair, I don't know how it worked.
These days, most people own Mercedes in Albania because of the amount of cars the mafia get in. There's just so many Mercedes, most people can afford one.
True.
how Albania's fallen. It used to have a pretty strong public transport going on, but when everyone's got Mercedes, you don't need no public transport, guys. Well, they have public transport. Don't take that the wrong way. Over
Right.
exaggerated joke, but like in most countries that have no longer got the commie influence, a lot of these things have
Right.
been defunded, along with healthcare and education.
Yeah, I saw something about the Albania train. Some of the rail, like trolleys, were under, they weren't in good conditions anymore.
Poorly maintained. Yeah,
Hmm.
Hmm. We've been
but I
we have a
will.
lot of good topics today. I'm not gonna lie. This is
I will rank it back in on the disabled issue, though. Oh
sure.
shit! So, I think the study was in California, which is a good place to study because there's a lot of homelessness in California.
I
Somewhere
can.
around the ballpark of 75 to 80% of people who are homeless are disabled. What's it? I'll try
Yeah.
and find the study at some point. It's a good study. Um, One
Yeah.
that weirdly PragerU used to back one of their arguments. Genuinely, it baffled me and many other people as to how this went down. It's a video I was gonna make a full in-depth thing on, but I think I ended up just streaming it. It's the one where they're talking about the poor, the homeless crisis shit on where they're trying to back the illegalization of homelessness. But they actually put a study that contradicted the claims they were trying to make. Obviously, just trying to make the illusion of research and trying to pull certain parts of that study so people wouldn't read the study and only look at their certain angles they took from it that actually aren't what the study said. Typical right wing tactic. But anyway, over 3/4 of the disabled sorry, of homeless people are disabled. Got the wrong way around. In this sort of in this situation, a lot of people end up in the lumpen proletariat, end up there because of disability. They can't withhold a job, which means they can't withhold a home, which means they go homeless. That is the most case situation for this, and a lot of other situations is because of growing up with ableist and eugenic parents and don't support them into getting any help. So, as the point they become an adult, they end up homeless as well. That happens too, but a lot of it is they've gone in through life struggling with their disability with no support. They've had to work a nasty dead end job in and out of them all their life. And eventually there's that one time that they go out of a dead end job and they never make it back into one and they end up homeless. They don't get the proper decent enough social security support or anything like that to give themselves a leg up to pay off their rent and keep the place they're in. And they're not gonna put you on they're not gonna help you move somewhere more affordable if you can't afford it. You're done. You're on the streets. That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna fucking end up on your
Yeah.
ass. They're gonna fucking shift you about because oh no, you fell out of a job and now you can't afford your rent. Let's try and find you a new place. Like you gotta hope you can move somewhere that's more affordable for you. And the best way you're gonna try and get that is through a house swap. And
Right.
chance of getting that is probably quite slim, especially in a place like America. So you end up on your ass. So a lot of these people are disabled workers, not the majority of them, are just knocking on homelessness's door, and they're already lumpenized by their conditions in which they have to entail themselves towards the workforce. They are disenfranchised, and that disenfranchisement is only going to get worse as time goes on because they're not seen as in any way essential to the work apparatus of the first world capitalist proletarian sector. Yeah, I should have said first world proletarian sector, but fuck it. Throw the word capitalism in every 5 seconds. It spices things up. Just joking. Uh,
Well, you're not wrong because as I've lived in California for like 30 years, so I know what you're talking about to be true. Fucking like majority of the people I've encountered who are homeless can barely walk. Like there was this one woman I met one time. She doesn't I don't know what happened to her, but near my job, people were treating her like shit, like she was a criminal, and she was on a wheelchair. She could barely move.
That's fucking horrific.
And I was like, and this is why another reason I discussed it with my coworkers. I'm the only person that works there I could feel like that has any empathy for the homeless. Everyone else treats them like they're fucking a nuisance.
Genuinely, we're seen as a blight on the world. And what's it? Fucking something that caught my face and made me fucking what's it? Gaffer moment as well. Prager, you saying Jesus was a capitalist? The fuck?
That's the most ridiculous fucking thing you could ever say, considering capitalism did not even exist in Jesus' time.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was the slave society of Rome that was a protonic capitalist system because, I mean, all forms of oppression through extraction are systems of capital. So it's complicated, but like Jesus was at least from what we understand was a construction worker. Them motherfuckers were slaves. They weren't capitalists. They weren't. Well, I mean, what was it? They weren't slave masters. They weren't aristocrats. They were slaves. So he's more akin to proletarians, I guess. Not exactly, because I do believe the proletariat of Rome were like
Wait,
masons and carpenters, but it's complicated.
Wait. Dennis Prager called a 15-year-old girl who was murdered by the
He's
Nazis.
one of them secular Jews.
What the fuck?
Wait,
Oh my
what?
god!
Wait, what?
Fucking
Say
fascist fucking outcry moment.
Well,
I mean, this is language that Ben Shapiro uses as well. You have the religious Jews and the ethnic Jews and the secular Jews and it's like fucking he's got his leaning tower of Judaism, and it's like while there is cultural heritage to ethnic peoples who have a cultural claim to Jewishness, Judaism itself is a religion. It's not a fucking like it's not some newfangled ethnicity that God came up with one time. Like it.
I got a question. Wouldn't that comment by Dennis Prager be anti-Semitic?
what?
I don't.
What did he
I'm
say
not. I'm not.
exactly?
Sorry, go on again, Garros.
Sorry, what did he say?
He called Anne Frank a secular Jew, which there's no. Is there any evidence to back that up?
I mean,
Even if she were, does it matter? She was fucking murdered by the Nazis.
Right.
What is wrong with secularism? That's my question.
Right. Well, you know,
it's like
then
it's like for someone that claims to be against Nazism, you literally support the Nazis every chance you can fucking get. It's like
I mean, the guy worked with Israel during the Cold War to do loads of crazy shit. So like,
it's like Anne Frank, like her life was ended like at the age of 15. She never had a chance to even live a full life. She died like an animal.
Ended sounds a bit too amicable to watch. She died of septicemia, blood poisoning in a concentration camp while suffering with gout and gonorrhea and a few other different horrific things.
God damn.
I always thought she died of typhus, but
that was it as well. Titus. She had loads of shit. Like what's it?
yeah, those concentration camps were just like
it's just disgusting.
Talk about pandemic levels.
Not to mention, Prager, how many fucking like Holocaust deniers do they platform like on their fucking thing?
Isn't he like promoting Kanye West or some shit as
Speaking of
well.
Kanye West, I think it's I think this
Oh
is
my
an
God.
interesting.
This is certainly not Kanye West that is Kanye best.
I personally think that people the way when they say that Kanye West is like insane is to me ableistic to people who actually don't fucking have his beliefs.
I
Right.
mean, there are people whom suffer with next level fucking hard to struggle with mental health fucking problems, and they wouldn't think anything as crazy as him.
Right.
I think people need to understand that people whom are crazy are not always mentally ill. If anything, it's quite common that they're not so mentally ill. They're just fucking batshit, like in the sense of how they've culturally been brought up. So it might have something to do with the class dynamic of being bourgeois or petty bourgeois. I
I mean,
wonder if there is a form of
right.
philosophical ideology that looks into the crazy batshit stuff that capitalism does on a scientific, class inductive level. I wonder. Oh shit! Wait,
But
we're all calling ourselves Marxists. I wonder whether these geezers have ever because there's people who are Marxists who are doing it. And it's like take a step back, actually do some analysis of the situation. Because Kanye West is not like some outlier. That's all I would lay out to these people because their mindset is so lazy. It's not even that it's just ableist, it's lazy. Like it's so
Right.
easy to just call someone
Well,
crazy
they've been making
on a mental health basis and shuffle them under the deck when it's like, no, there's a class interest that's creating this. Why else would he have support? It's the all right and all that you can try and well, I mean, it's not all right and all, but it's easy and all that you can go and fucking slate one man on his mental health. But when he's got mass support, that means well, I mean, within a class he has mass support, otherwise he wouldn't be presentable on the bourgeois democratic front. So certain elements of the petty bourgeois, the bourgeoisie, and even the labor aristocracy must be backing him. He wouldn't have that support if there isn't a sector of a class that has found him to be profitable for their interests, which means they're not alienated by him. Which means that there's not just this isn't some like batshit craziness because it's obviously not coming out as an outlier to what people's outcries are. He's fallen in line with a certain group of people's outcries.
Well, I mean,
what's
he's a billionaire. I mean, the guy has funding from like Gap, Adidas. He just bought some stupid app that's like he could go post or whatever,
Or didn't he turn
Parlor or
around the other day
whatever.
and said like I could say anti-Semitic shit and Adidas wouldn't drop me?
Yeah, he was pushing. He's going out there doing the most vile crap. It's
on
not
it?
even just anti-Semitism. He's doing anti-black racism as well.
Not to be honest with you, it's really scary just how mainstream anti-black racism and anti-Semitism has become in American society. I mean, openly,
I
like
don't know. It never really went away
it
really.
never went away, but it's it's so masked off now.
It's
Well,
because it's never gotten better and it's been getting worse over time. So while within the middle class they've cleaned things up. I mean, like blackface isn't a Saturday night comedy gimmick of the TV anymore, sort of thing. Like they're allowing black people into cafeterias and to sit down on the bus. Those very small and pathetically minor things. Like, I mean, this is commonplace for anyone that they should be able to do those things. I mean, black people were not free of discrimination in the places they were allowed to go and eat and they were allowed to sit. Like, the ability to sit down and actually purchase a bit of food doesn't stop you from being discriminated. So it really is bottom of the barrel shit that actually did change. All in all, the class to class oppression as it goes down is getting worse and worse, and they have refined their methodology. Kwame Ture talks about this. So the way he gets into this is that um the new term for black, because he goes through it, he goes, it started off with the N-word, then it moves on to being called black, which is still racist, but it's better than being distinctly utilizing a term that was constantly used as a way to market black people as slaves. About every country used the Spanish word for black, but it was still racist that you were being called black. It didn't change the dynamic of racism there. It was a win against being called the N word constantly. And then it changes to African American, and this is still assimilative and racist. And it's got a newfound manner into how it operates comparative to others that makes it more dangerous to black people. And that's that you can go on a two ways. You
Yo,
can be seen as an African or you can be seen as an American. It's never really both. And so what ends up going down is either you're seen as one of those Africans where you're like, I mean, American eugenics has never gone away. So their mentality is you're committing to your Africanness, i.e., being lower class in a ghetto, poor, maybe involved in a lumpen posse or crew or a gang. Um, those things are not all the same, and I do not have the time to explain them all to everyone. But um, they function into different things. Constantly, people call them all gangs, but a posse, a crew, and a gang, they're all three different things completely. But these they're seen as people committing to their Africanness, and they're not seeing them as African in a respectful sense. It's the racist stereotype of Africans as natural born criminals and et cetera, barbaric people. You know, that typical Anglo-Saxon colonialist mentality of we civilize the people. And so when you're a middle-class African, you are then seen as someone who has worked hard against the genetics and have become one with the white people, and so you get the newfangled title of an American, and you get seen as overcoming your Africanness and getting a seat at the table. And that's that racist dynamic that the term African American puts our new African brothers and sisters in a really, really horrific position right now, as racism has taken an up the ante. Because what Kwame Ture, and I'm sorry I got a lot to explain in this, but it's a very extensive bit. What Kwame Ture gets into with this next is he's saying that racism has not decreased, it has increased. At the point they got the concessions of blackness, it was still a de-identifier. It was a way of taking away their individual identity and making them this black shroud, this still negative problem. Everything that's seen as black is seen as bad. That's why black power is a really important motion. It's to respect that blackness is not a negative thing and that black people deserve not just to be not just the right to not be victimized in a brutal fashion, but the right to have power, to defend themselves, stand for themselves, have a voice and a seat to fucking chart that voice from at any fucking table in any society in which they exist within, and to be seen for the nation they are. And so black power is an essential pointation of that part, but black power doesn't end at the concept of blackness. It sees blackness as not a negative thing, and therefore seeks to the right of those whom are black to have the right to their nation, so in which they can be seen for their African nationality and be respected for it. And that's where the new African struggle comes from. And so, what Kwame Ture gets into with this, when he's talking about the next stage forward, which is the rise of the African American term on top of this, is it will come in tandem with a rise in racism, as did the equitation of blackness when they got to be known as black instead of constantly known via the N word, which is not a small, it's not a very big difference. That's the same word just translated. It's still not a big difference. It was still somewhat of a stepping stone. Commentary very much doesn't take away any of the bravado of that stepping stone, but it came with a rise of what's it? It came with a rise in racism and police brutality. The the acquisition of the name African American, which is it certainly by the plain sound of it is less dehumanizing just at the front face of it than being known just by the notion of color. But it came with a coaxial rise in racism and police brutality against black people. This was around the time of '92. I was talking about this just for context. This was after the riots in LA had already kicked off, and that basically what Kwame Ture come to conclude is that police brutality at the point of the '90s, and I'd argue since our comrade Kwame Ture died in the mid late '90s, it has gotten worse. But he pointed out that police brutality in the '90s was worse than it was in the '60s,
Yeah.
regardless of how much cleaner bourgeois society has made the middle class and the upper class look in regards to how it purveys and looks into racism. And to be honest, as we can tell with the massive popularity of racist conservative media, it didn't even do a very good job at that. In the lower classes, it is only elevated to next level degrees. And you know what's it? This compounds into a lot of issues. I mean, the concept of the way in which white trash is looked at is that the middle class white mentality is that white people whom are also in that poverty sector of society are as good as the blacks. No, I'm not saying this gives them any common consciousness with black people all the time. It does sometimes. A lot of the time, those white people stay being racist and it doesn't shake off them, and it doesn't matter the fact that their own white people consider them that way. It actually makes a lot of them people double down on that racism to appeal to that whiteness and try and make themselves a part of what they once were. But that's the white mentality, is that if you're a criminal, you're as good as those natural born criminals. That's their mentality towards black people. And so when the African American thing came about, that term is very much centered around assimilating those whom they seem as acceptably they seem as acceptably white enough to be part of the America crew, and then the ones whom are not are still treated as racistly as every African. I mean, it's racist both ends of the trees, really. But what I'm getting at is like the brutality of the more brutal forms of racial oppression are then exerted onto the lower classes, whom are seen as committing to their Africanness, even though they're not centering it on how much these people are actually interacting with their own culture, although that's another different element in which these people are abused around, because that abuse is there. This specific denunciation is on the basis of their socioeconomic position as a black man or woman. That's the sort of key element to it, and it creates this element of racism that we see in places like India. So in India, British colonialism has created this need to be in this certain subclass in India of English speaking Indians. And so people break their necks and break their kids' necks trying to get some element of their family to be English speaking so that they can get the higher paying jobs that require English speaking people to entwine with it. And this is all a part of the way that the English not only still dominate a tenth of their economy, but the colonial culture around India was always centered on prioritizing and celebrating those whom abandoned Indian culture to learn to speak English and act British. That was the preferred part, the partition and way in which the British Empire abused and used the Indian people. In America, they're doing the same hoop jumping, where they want to make people jump into hoops to be as American as possible and make being an African still as this horrible, horrific thing to be a part of, to the point where Kwame Ture towards the end of the speech gets to his problem where he's like trying to engage with African brothers in America and talk about the great international struggle of African peoples that stretches from Europe to America to Africa and all along the roots of the slave trade. It's the Pan-African struggle stretches far out past the borders of Africa. Um, he get told like, I ain't no African by someone, and it's like that's depressing for a man. Then when like he's speaking with someone whom is a brother. They're both African brothers and uh, well, it was a brother in the situation, but and sisters whom were all victims of the slave trade and are still excluded on any fair or respectful ground in regards to being invited into having representation in America. It's assimilation or get fucked, which puts them on the back burner. And that brother has been suffocated by that structured institutional racism that has whitewashed his family history and his ties to his family history to a point where he'll identify as an American over identify as an African. That's heartbreaking. And this
Yeah.
is not an uncommon process of Anglo-Saxon colonialism, Yankee colonialism as well. They're two sides of the same fucking British coin. They you look in any major British colony. I can English, I promise. You'll see this process of cultural genocide and whiteification of the inhabitants and attempts to conglomerate great industrial powers in certain sectors of their empires. That's where countries like Canada got their big status as an individual economy. And what's it? Not all people were opposed to India becoming a dominion in the 30s either. So that was something that was planned as well by a certain sector of government. People should look into that history because there's some really interesting accounts of the crazy shit Churchill was doing to try and ensure that India stayed as a dominion of, sorry, as a enthralled sector of the empire with no right to dominion, no more than right at all. Notes of like 7-hour speeches in Parliament.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I do kind of notice that trend where sometimes I notice that certain kind of white people in America will sometimes refer to you. Sometimes they can refer to you as Mexican, but then sometimes maybe it doesn't happen as much anymore. But they would be like, "Oh, you're Mexican American," and then one of the other terms as well is well. So then I could kind of do the flip side of that. Like I had some family members in Texas or Tejas because some of them call themselves Tejanos and all that. But if you say like they hear somebody call themselves Chicano, they get kind of they get a little bit frustrated with that because they tend to view that kind of thing as like, how do I put it? It's like they don't want to call themselves Mexican, etc. That's kind of how they view it, and But yeah, I see what Stone's saying.
Yeah, they're made to feel unclean in their own culture. And I mean,
Right.
what's it? The African people have already been a major victim in America to one of the big nations of cultural genocide, and that is wiping out of language and of in the case of it being Anglo-Saxon colonialism, anglifying their namehood, changing everything about them to whitewash their history, whom they
Right.
are, and whom their generations to be will be. Because I mean, and to be we for all that we tried, so much of their culture survived. But genuinely, anyone who hasn't looked it up yet, look up the history of what we did in the slave trade to take as much culture as we could away from African people.
I was
Yeah.
also just gonna add that anybody who thinks that America wasn't Islamophobic in the past, that's technically not true because, well, like I'm basically, I read this one video. I gotta find it again, but there was a black Muslim talking about how some of the slaves actually were Muslim, but slavery happened with the slave trade, and some of them lost their religion through the process of being sent to America and all that. And
There's a really good book. I forgot the name of the author that basically talks about the history of Islamophobia, and it links it to Orientalism as well. I have to look up the name of the book. I do have
Oh,
it.
we were a big proprietor of Orientalism. That big fetishization around the 1800s, 1700s time. Britain just
Mhm.
started getting a big hard on for China.
Well,
Oh, and
Right.
the Middle East, and the Middle East.
Jesus, this stream has been all over the place. If I had to be honest with you, but
Yeah,
whatever.
you invited me. What do you expect?
Well,
And
My
one,
life is all over the place at the minute, so I'm partake. I'm giving you a taste. There you go.
well, well. I on it's because it's just more content for my viewers to watch. Because who knows when I'll do another one.
yeah. And I also wanted to
Right.
point out, I also just wanted to point out too that also uh, area or geographical area of origin or tribal origin or like knowing where your homeland is, like that's another thing that a lot of African people don't know at all, like where were they born in Africa, because when we say Africa, it's a big continent and it's not all the same.
Yeah, there's many different cultures,
Right. And
and you know, I know this is not related to this, and I can't talk about this because I don't have this experience. But another thing I find really scary too is just how normalized transphobia has become. Even though America's always been transphobic, but just how avert it is.
It's gotten worse. In the last 2 years, transphobia has gotten measures of worse in America and the UK.
it's just if you look
yeah.
if you pay attention to all the rhetoric of transphobes, it is not that different from the Nazis.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
remove
they become more visible. I would say that trans people became more visible. It really started around 2015, um, when a lot of things, happened and they got more media representation, and then this led to a big right wing backlash. Because prior to that, they didn't actually, the right wing didn't even like, trans people weren't even on their radar, basically. It was much more of the gays. And as somebody who grew up, I can tell you, like, growing up in the 2000s or whatever, the gays was definitely very much looked down upon until, well, probably until very recently, and then they started on
I've seen
the trans people.
nothing but regression regarding how gays are being treated
I agree.
now.
I
Yeah.
mean, when did transphobia end in America? No, transphobia never ended. In
Well,
fact,
what's
it
interesting
probably
about
got worse.
transphobia is I think Jessie Jenner. I forgot her name, but she did a really. Her video was censored by YouTube. I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Walsh's video. What is a woman? At least it's a documentary. Like the reason I'm bringing this up and why it's this related because if you look up the history of transphobia, a lot of the stuff that was used against trans people was let's just use women's sports as an example or sports in general. Do you know when a woman beat a man in figure skating back in the last century? They banned women from that sport. That's
I
how
didn't know
that
that.
the main reasons they segregated them because they didn't want to compete against people that could beat them. that's the reason why this whole hysteria with women's sports is coming from, because they've seen one famous trans person win, and suddenly it's they're like a bunch of them winning, and not to mention, I forgot this white girl's name, who is she's a basically the right's favorite fucking transphobe that they use to promote their war against trans people, all because she lost against two black trans girls who who didn't have nearly the amount of capital that she possesses.
Oh God, you know where this is going. Not only is there going to be transphobia, but now there's going to be racism. A white girl was beaten by black people.
It's just this
No,
is
we all
why
know what kind of white guy, nice guy warriors are going to come out of the fucking weeb cupboards or closets, as you got down say over there. You come out of the weeb closet and come on and find this papa, this woman is in disgrace. The blacks are starting on her again. Quick, Birdie, go get the shotgun.
it is trans people are just the start when it comes to these fucking right wing psychopaths. Like they'll
I
target
mean, what's
everyone
it?
else eventually.
Well, I mean, it's already had a cascade effect where both sexism and racism has come into how in which they try and um, uh, transvestigate people whom they consider as fucking secret trans Mexican Jewish space people.
Like you want to know how to piss a transphobe off? Just introduce them to a trans Jew. No joke.
I mean, just any one of minority status at this point, because it just seems to be the name of the game. Is
or you know, or you get people like Dugan who say that gay people don't exist in Chechnya, and
Wait,
that
honestly,
human rights is evil.
I feel like we're reaching the limit what we can talk about
rights is
here.
evil. What?
Yeah, yeah,
What?
yeah.
What
He
the
said
fuck?
because he said that human rights is based on like Western civilization or something.
Oh God.
Humans
The
don't
West.
exist in the non-West, apparently.
I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm just gonna say this.
You'll make the English start fucking chanting that.
I'm just gonna say this. The fucking the fascists in Ukraine targeted the wrong fucking car.
Who?
You know, in
You're
fact,
gonna-
they should just blew up both of them instead of just doing one. They should
Right.
just done a double
Bro,
fucking.
it's a bit sus that the guy like fucking left the car and went for another car just moments before it happened. It's like
well, he
it,
saw
it
her.
almost seems maybe false flagged one in here. Like,
Well,
Well,
he was at the scene, he actually saw the car explode. He was only like a little bit away,
yeah, but
basically.
why did he all of a sudden decide to stop traveling in the same car as her?
We don't know, but we know that he
That's
has
what's sus
bodyguards.
about it. It's just like all of a sudden, like, did his spider senses tingle and he got out the car and forgot
I
to
think.
get
Well,
his daughter
he
out the car?
he has security, like he has his own bodyguards. So I don't know.
Why the fuck wouldn't he
very
do those same
proletariat.
bodyguards for his own flesh and blood? What the fuck?
Well, he's
To
like a
me,
I
petty
don't know if he
bourgeois.
did. I'm just saying, like, it's a bit sus.
if I were a father myself, my child's safety would come first before my own.
Well, the thing is, like Dugan has written like 5 different essays about sacrificing your own children of the elites, and
the
That's
elites.
he uses Carl Jung as like an example for this whole sacrifice thing. he believes in.
Jordan
parent-
Peterson's favorite fucking
Any parent
Right.
psychiatric guy.
sacrificing their own children is a fucking psychopath. And honestly, it's like, what the fuck?
But the blood sacrifices. I mean, there is an element to revolutionary struggle where it's like, you know, the wider struggle of my brothers and sisters is more important than the individual struggle of me and my family's bread. But that only goes so far down the road, because you can't just then be like, time then to righteously strangle every part of my fucking livelihood because of revolution. But it also does impede towards that. Like, you know, there's a professional element to how these things go down, where, you know, it is about that brotherhood struggle more than anything. Otherwise, you fall into the lap of opportunism. But
Obviously.
that's the thing. We're rivals with fascists. Of course, we're gonna have similar fucking motifs to struggle in regards to. There's a big movement that we all have to commit towards. It's just the difference is that we're fighting a humanitarian struggle. So even though we come in together on that brotherhood struggle to conglomerate together, it's not seen as a sacrificial duty like it is with the fascists, where they see themselves as kamikaze warriors. It's more of a like, I will put towards a struggle that might put my life on the line, that's going to hopefully bring about a livelihood for everyone when none of us are having to risk our lives like that. That's the end point of that struggle. But there still involves some semblance of I guess, like for lack of a better term, sacrifice of the self, where one doesn't put their own interests before the interests of the movement. Fascists are all about being that individual who makes the big sacrifice because they're all Kaiserists and they see
Right.
themselves as coming in and showing the sheep how it's done as a shepherd, even though they're wolves preying on the sheep they are so insistent on eating upon.
Yeah. It's all about like Ragnaros for these people. It's all about like the coming like doom basically. Like fascists like on the one hand like they want to see like this their
I got
utopian future, but on the other hand they also want to see everything get destroyed. But one other
Yeah,
thing I wanted to bring up about
Machiavellianism hinges itself on the idea of the
right.
utopian dystopia.
Right. Oh, I got the dude in quote here. He says, and then it's really kind of to the subject, but yeah, liberalism is essentially racist. It is imposed as something universal and obligatory as a product of the historical experience of modern Western society. Human rights ideology is also racist. It asserts that the individual liberal concept is the only way to understand human nature. Slavery is also a modern phenomenon. In the Christian Middle Ages, it was absent. It started with the change of traditional society to modernity, capitalism, and liberalism. Liberalism is a totalitarian racist ideology that pretends to give freedom but installs slavery.
no
Unquote.
no
Well,
chattel
I mean, fascism
chattel
believes in
chattel
collectivized individualism, so that's why they preach like that.
no chattel slavery is a modern thing, not slavery. What is he going on about? I
Well,
can't
that's
even
that.
like.
Well, he
Yeah,
knows.
I mean, like slavery, the chattel type. I mean, even that is not as new as people might think, but it's certainly more modern than Roman slavery or fucking what's it, serfdom. But like, I mean, the proletarian class is in and of itself another form of slavery. It's just not chattel slavery. It's not house
Right.
slavery. Proletarianism. It's not proletarianism. Proletarian slavery, where one is enthralled in let's say wage slavery. There we go. I know how to English. Wage slavery, where one is enthralled into a supposedly choice driven contract where there's no choice in the matter because they need to work to earn a wage to pay their bills to continue to live and survive, and maybe if you're have been aristocratized in the labor force, thrive. But it is nonetheless a form of what's it, slavery. It's just nowhere near as brutal as chattel slavery, and also not as brutal as serfdom.
Well, it's getting late where I'm at, so I like to revisit the disabled topic, one last time before I end the stream.
Or
Um,
early if you want to be a semantic prick about it.
Gingaros,
Yeah, it's pretty early.
um, would you like to add something to the disabled discussion? These,
Uh, yeah. We were talking. Basically. I mean, I mean, other to say than America is a fucking ableist country. Like, there's no getting around it. Um, if you're disabled here, you're pretty much fucked. Unless you literally have a family that has literally millions and millions of dollars to take care of you. I mean, other than that, you're pretty much just fucked at that point.
Are
Um,
you really? But here's the question: if you live in a family that's relatively wealthy, are you really disabled?
Yeah, disabled is a societal situation.
yeah, it's
I mean, I'm not.
socioeconomic.
By the way,
No, it is correct what you're saying though. It's tied to social class.
I was just bringing up a rhetorical question because if you are poor and you're disabled, that is not the same thing as being like upper middle class to be and bourgeois and being disabled. Yeah, you may have some things that may make things more difficult for you, but you can basically negate your disability because you don't have to worry about like your disability hindering your ability to live a fulfilling life. If you're poor, you can't have a fulfilling life if you're disabled.
I
You're just
will answer every rhetorical question.
which is
I was I was
yeah.
just gonna say that. Well, I mean, there can be few situations where sometimes a disabled person in the middle class, kind of in that or upper, their like parents or
Bourgeois.
grandparents theoretically could. Well, yeah, but they could theoretically be controlling, and manipulating, or abusing their
No,
own.
so what's it? That's actually a good point that from your own experience you can talk to because you yourself are in a disabled situation while having family that are bourgeois and petty bourgeois. And so like certain elements of his life have been somewhat aided out from. We had a very interesting discussion on it. And I won't go into too many details. It's on their pointation. But
Right,
what's core about it is that while certain elements of their life are paid off, it's like the bare shavings off their back. Everything else, they're left to fucking wallow in the dirt of. And I mean, they're seen
right,
as someone whom the family is having to dish money towards, and not because of their care for you, but for the care of other members of your family that you're tied to.
right. Yeah, and to be fair, I have met at least one actual like petty bourgeois person, a bit older than me. Well, it's more of a story that I had heard through like a friend, but like there was a really even like extreme example, admittedly, where like so this person had like their college being paid by a richer relative, but they aren't parents, you know. But then they so in this case they went to like a Bernie Sanders rally, and then their like aunt found out or whatever, and they lost their like college fund type of thing. And
They lost their college fund because they went to a Bernie Sanders rally.
yeah, because you know these are rich, petty bourgeois, conservative types.
That's fucked up to do that to your own kid.
Well, they did it to like their own nephew, technically.
But
That's why the relation changes up a bit
I mean,
with
I
some
was
of
thrown
them.
still
out of the
fucked up
streets by my
regardless.
working class dad because I joined the Communist Party, so I was kicked out the house.
Right. And,
Capitalism encourages like families not to be loyal to each other, but to be at each other's throats.
right.
Which
Yeah,
I actually
yeah,
think that discussion we should be having in depth on a different video because if we talk about the family, this will go from being a 2 hour stream to a 5 hour stream because that there's so much it, like material we could talk about. So I
Well, what? Well,
Shout out to
well,
your
I could.
boy Engels on the family.
Well, I was gonna add another thing. I mean, I wish I had done more research on it, but I'll do these like two little examples. I mean, at least in the context of like American history, my understanding is that the JFK family and maybe a few others in that kind of petty bourgeois class in their era, my understanding is they're the ones who, because they have their own families with diseases and such, and, you know, even though they're still in the upper, well, geez, they're bourgeois, but but they're the ones who kind of gave tiny reforms, I should say, about like the Disability Act of year something something. I mean, that's maybe like a small history of how the government even started caring
Like
tiny bit
Yes,
about
Well, a
like
lot
I
of the
disabled
rights
but
that
people.
were achieved by Black rights struggle. A lot of
That
the
too.
well, like I said, the family discussion is easily a 3 to 4 hour discussion, and it's getting late. So
But I will state this though is that the monarchy they rammed in to care homes and never visited these family again. Members of their family that were disabled.
I see.
Yeah,
yeah,
multiple
same thing with
occasions.
the Kennedys. Same thing with the Kennedy family with that one member of the
Right.
family. They did like something with her. I forget the whole story, but basically it was a, a experimental treatment in the brain and basically lobotomized her or something like
Uh,
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
they
the
right.
just stuck
50s
her
and
in
the
a home.
60s, the US was doing mass lobotomizing on people, especially people of color.
Right.
It was seen as one of these like radium, a be all a be all cure for the undesirables, and that very old posh rhotic English accent that America used to have that all of a sudden just vanished in the last 100 years. But yeah, lobotomies were the radium of the 50s.
Yeah, and I mean sterilization. I mean,
For the
sterilization
bacteria.
campaigns. I would argue that people who go through those suffering, tortured, they could be considered disabled. Due to the circumstances.
Definitely.
Jesus,
No, no, anything to be forcefully sterilized is disabling your ability to not only have kids, but those chemical castrations typically fucked with people's mental and psychological health, as well as many ailments of their physical health. The guy who
Right.
fucking invented the modern concept of the computer was fucking Alan Turing, and he died in a mental asylum because of fucking what was it? Died in a mental asylum? Yeah, he died in a mental asylum and killed himself. I can't remember which one it was, but because of what chemical castration did to him, so they chemically castrated him because he was homosexual.
Wow.
That's a really big alleyway as well. A disability to get into is the eugenic practices of healthcare against the disabled, which will massively intersect with a video I want to do a talk on that Black Red Guard did about eugenics and how America is built off of the backs of eugenics and how that affects Black people. I want to watch that not because I have any criticisms to really make. It's more so to just apply the disabled lens on the issue and also speak to it from a UK standpoint on the matter because there's a lot of crossover between the development of eugenics here as well as the development of eugenics in America. It was social Darwinism was started in America by Darwin's cousin, just as a precursor to what I'm getting at here. And
Right.
social Darwinism is where eugenics comes from.
Right.
one thing one thing I would like to say though is what because I think that this goes back to the first thing I said when I started the stream. It makes me really angry and I'm livid at the very fact that every time any subject on the disabled is discussed, my first world is just tune out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's that troika of tyranny, the disabled people, the colonized people, and the queer people. We're coming to get you.
it's
Yeah,
like
Even
it's always basically for them. It's always like, oh, why are you guys always talking about this? Or the people that say, oh, why are Americans always talking about race so much? And it's like, I wonder
well,
what could it
right.
be?
I've recalled there was this Japanese guy. that basically this was back in 2016. That was basically ranting on why Americans are so obsessed with race.
I
And
wonder if it's the fucking 600 years that the colonies have been there massacring people and using slaves for their labor force. I wonder
let's
if that
just
has anything to do
Yeah.
with it.
let's just say the guys'
Give them
comment
a
section. Let's say that the guys' comment section was full of neo Nazis, basically supporting him, and those
I
who
mean,
actually did call out like his hypocrisy when it came to race, when they point out what Japan like, what um, why don't you talk about what Japan does to Koreans?
and what's
Yeah.
it? But the also their own natives on that island, because I mean the what people commonly call Japanese actually descend from both Korean and Chinese settlers of the last 2,000 years. But the what's it on America? It's what was it I was gonna say? Um, it's like a lot of people look at like slavery from just the element of chattel African slavery that came over in what was it 1609. Do people not get that there was the enslavement of Native Americans from the 1400s? Like when they got there, like the first thing that I know this is to white people. I know this isn't something that black people are gonna make a mistake on, but this is like middle class white people that only want to look at like slavery from when the first African slave got here. But what about the Native Americans? We were shipping
Right.
them back to Europe the moment that Europeans got to America. The first thing we sent back to Europe were people.
Yeah, they enslaved so many people in Hispaniola that it went from like what was it, 300,000 people down to like 100 in like a couple decades or something. Like
They had to
they
tell
were
him to
working them
stop
to death.
sending slaves because they had enough slaves.
Yeah,
Like that's why I get appalled by when people talk about how when I hear fascists talk about how Western civilization this, Western civilization that. It's like you do realize that the most destructive wars in world history were started by fucking Europeans.
But we do this with both Africa and the Americas, where we're like we turned up and they were just a peaceful nomadic or like primitive societies, even though in both cases that was not true. Uh,
Right.
Anywhere in the world, including Europe in that time, you could find a group of people who may or may not have had a constructed city space, travelers as they might be, nomads. They exist. They still exist in Europe. They still exist all over the world today. But in Africa and the fucking Americas, as you could find in any continent on the world, you will find constructed cities, organized trade routes, and even empires. Like, we did not turn up and grace them with white guy hunky imperialism, and then all of a sudden they knew how to do the colonies and the empires all of a sudden because we went and brought them marijuanas. Don't work like that.
I
They
mean,
were already kings, there were already empires, there were already free associated groups of peoples and other different movements that are going on all around the world because civilization is not a uniquely European thing. And America's especially one. A lot of Americans seem to think that like we turned up like to a place that was just empty and that they were all nomads living just off the land and that in uh ecological style houses and stuff like that, the no constructed cities because America burnt those cities to the ground. There was plenty of
right.
constructed cities from and they were constructed with stone. It's not like they were like fucking at the point of mastering the art of constructing with wood. They had mastered the art of constructing with stone. It's not, I feel like I'm sounding like a fucking racist just trying to talk about
Well,
this. Like they were as advanced as anyone in the world. No one came in
yeah.
and wowed them with that technology. Is the point I'm laying out
Well,
of?
I would
I
Yeah.
argue,
mean,
I would
oh,
argue that they were more advanced in some ways, actually.
Yeah, I
well,
think
It's
the
it's
Aztecs, I think, had
okay,
brain
I could,
surgery, if my
yeah.
memory.
Well, I could get into that. I mean, well, if you start mentioning like the Aztecs or the Mayans or the Incas, what the white people start doing, this is what they'll do. This is when they start going into like kind of like this kind of, they'll basically like, oh, they were savages, they're cannibalists and all this crap, you
bro. A
know.
lot of our like etiquette around how we deal with cuisine comes from the Aztecs. Like
Yeah,
one of the most used ingredients in cuisine is potatoes, cocoa, chili, all come from the Aztecs. Those things
yeah,
are really, really intrinsic to a way in which a mass majority of foods around the world today that people and conglomerate towards are made.
yeah. I was gonna also say the Incas, I believe. Yeah, it's one of those indigenous tribes within that era, and they still know how to even make them. And I had to find this video again, but
Well,
they
Jesus.
already
Okay.
they already had like bamboo boats, and they were able like they work. So
Okay. I
I'm
personally, we went way off topic. Not that this isn't
Yeah.
discuss, but this has been anyway. I think if I keep saying one last thing, we're just this is going to go on for another hour. So, final thoughts, everyone,
Fucking
on
what's
anything,
it?
whatever. It doesn't have to be about the disabled struggle. Anything.
Um, shit. Uh, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what's it? The reason it's easy to get conglomerated into detractions is there's so many layers to a lot of these discussions. I mean, like, even in the element of just talking about disabled people in the workforce, you can't not talk about how they conglomerate outwards. And this is why we always get thrown onto other tangents as well, because of the intersection between these different struggles. Like I said, it's sort of in the modern era, and to be honest, it's been this for the last 100 years. There's been this sort of troika of the worsts. I mean, it's been a longer than 100 years for disabled and colonized peoples, but re- recognition of even the existence of queerness has been something that's taken long enough for queer people to obtain. And then as soon as they obtain that, is the last 100 to 200 years, they've joined the crew of being the troika of tyranny when it comes to the eugenic mindset. If you're queer, if you're disabled, if you're colonized, you're seen as the deplorables, and so a lot of these things are going to intersect and relate to each other. And I mean, the people who end up suffering at the worst end of this, and the reason why it always has to talk about all three ends of the stick, are the people whom are colonized, queer, and disabled. That is where you are gonna be at the most brutal end of the stick when it comes into all of this, because the people whom are against these three groups are typically always against all three of them. There can be cases where they're not against all of them, but they are against some of them. But usually, someone whom is homophobic or transphobic will also conglomerate towards racism and ableism. It's such a common place, especially in a place like America, where reaction is at quite a height. But we gotta be careful not to not to commit to American exceptionalism. While it can be worse in America, it is still very bad here over in Europe.
I've
And
heard
the
it's worse.
anti-LGBTQ issues have been getting
mhm,
worse in recent years.
It's worse
facts.
in Europe than it is in the states.
Yeah,
It's
No, it is worse in
undeniable fact.
America. I mean, like when you got transphobes whom are more armed, and it is worse
yeah,
in America, but it's still pretty bad here. Like we're not like it would be a dickhead move for us to point over at America, where it's like it's not much better here. Like for how much it's better, it's
Yeah,
it's dimes to fucking dollars. The difference
the
is little.
the Russian army is putting like red armbands on people with like with their own private illnesses, but in this case like STDs. I don't know why, but it seems to be like some kind of homophobic panic,
Yeah, I
basically.
mean it's just that people think that like STDs are a homosex condition.
They still think that, or and then there's still, yeah, but it's not even just like Russia. To be fair, it's just all over the first world, um, for
I
sure.
think one thing I'd like to say regarding the first world. Speaking of which, I like to end the stream with this. I actually think it's our job as communists in the imperial core to do whatever we can to sabotage it, because there's no way we're going to build revolution here.
I mean, it
But
will eventually, but not yet.
well,
I
I'm
mean,
just talking about what we can
yeah.
do at the here and now. What we can do, like the short term, what we can realistically do is do whatever we can to sabotage the first world, because because
I mean, the more important process is to be looking at how which can we fulfill the role of dual power within the process of revolutionary defeatism, taking the role of revolutionary defeatism, but knowing that okay, well, what dual power processes can we organize for the lumpen proletariat, especially those whom are targeted for disability, ethnicity, and colonial status, and queerness.
Mhm.
I agree. We because things are getting really scary, and I keep saying this in my streams. Like I know this is ending on a gloomy note, but honestly, I don't think any of you are here just to me to tell you what you want to hear. I'm telling you how it fucking is. Like
Right.
like things are getting worse, and anyone that actually thinks that anyone's going to save you, you're mistaken. We have to support each other. We can't depend on fucking one person anymore at all. We need to
Right.
get rid of this liberal mindset. Like for those of
The
you
day
who
of Kaiserism is long over.
for those who are still in this Bernie mindset, just stop. Seriously, just fucking stop. Like Bernie
Please.
Sanders has sold
Great
out.
man theory is bunk. It's
Yes,
against us.
not to mention for those of you
The Marxist theory is that the masses have always dictated the change in history.
I agree.
The liberal struggles couldn't exist without first lying to the masses about a society of fraternity, tax free. Everyone will have some possession of the land. That's what the bourgeoisie lied to the lower feudal and proto proletarian classes during the liberal revolutions of England, France, and America. Um, so.
It's like the bourgeoisie are like they're not even offering breadcrumbs anymore. Like they're really not.
I mean, there's some of them that are. I mean, fascism is playing its game, and it has different factions that have different
Yeah.
efficacies around doing things. The current institutions, the current institutions that are trying to go their own fascist way are doing a very shit job of it. It detracts nothing away from how much of a fascist they are. They are very much fascists, but the current institutions are tripping over their own dick to do neoliberal shit while also trying to do fascist shit, and it's hilarious to a degree, but also horrifying at the same time in how much they're crashing and burning. Because unfortunately, it's people at the bottom, us lumpen proles, will get the bad end of the stick when shit starts to crash and burn. But fuck me, the middle class are looking at this as as being the almighty taxpayers, while the rich pay no tax, and taxes are paid for poor people to even exist. So they have a they get easily pulled into a Malthusian mindset of seeing themselves as having to be like ransacked of money to ensure that poor people exist, and the capitalists don't pay their way enough in that retrospect. And they always end up, not always, but a lot of the time they always end up looking fucking both ways in it, and it's like demonizing the poor as well as the rich in that equation, rather than just demonizing the rich.
Yeah. Anyway, no matter what happens on my job, I'm done. And I've said that earlier in my stream. I'll find a new job as soon as I'm able to, and then when that time comes, I will get into detail on what the hell it was like working for the current job that I have, because as it stands, I can't say anything. I've already said too much. I'm in as vague as I possibly could.
He signed privacy clauses with the American deep state. He's got to be out of
Really
work for
because
2
I don't
years
know.
with the CIA before they'll allow him to speak out.
I don't know if any of my coworkers are watching. I doubt it, but it's better to be safe than to be sorry. Considering I don't.
CIA training.
Anyway,
All right. So my grandmother, so if you're watching and you're his coworker, my grandmother had a little old saying from World War II: "Loose lips sink ships." So
I agree.
zip it.
Now, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just do
You'd
it.
have to say that in Morse code so we can keep the World War II vibe.
Fuck it. Okay, if I don't end this now, this is gonna go on for another. Not joking. All right. Long live the IRA. Fuck the king. Long live Palestine. Fuck America. Fuck China. Fuck Russia.
Free Haiti as well. Yeah.
I
And
mean, to quote the Americans when
yeah.
Trump were elected, ain't my king.
Hands off Haiti.
and most of all, fuck you. Fuck any fascist that fucking thumbs down this video. And
Solidarity with the fucking Nigerian, Palestinian, Yemenis peoples and many other peoples around the world right now are going through fucking systematic genocide as we sit and speak in our protected first world imperial core countries where we are not so much, although of course cultural genocide and murder genocide is still a massive problem over here. It is nowhere near as bad as many places around the world where genocides on the scale of World War II, anti-Semitic and anti-Slavic genocide and anti-Chinese genocides, whereas they be, are occurring around the globe as we speak.
And the last thing I'm going to say: all power to the people. Down with the fascist pigs.